Hello and welcome to the Point 99 podcast. We're a running podcast made by runners for runners. If you're new to running, we hope to have topics and discussions that will help you along whatever path your journey is taking, or for any returning listeners and seasoned runners, maybe some stories that will have you empathizing with our experiences. Whether it's lessons we've learned during our own journeys, embarrassing stories, or heartstring pulling moments. Hopefully you'll stick with us while we try share some good vibes, motivation, and positivity. And hopefully we can have a laugh along the way. Firstly, I hope you've had a spectacular week since episode 2 dropped. Before I get too carried away with what will likely be a jam-packed episode as I give you a rundown on how the Amsterdam Marathon unfolded, I'm going to roll out the red carpet and welcome back our guest from the last episode. The running order for the podcast is purposefully a little bit different this week because I haven't been checking out my guest's social feed over the past few days. So when our chat comes in a second, it will be fresh and unrehearsed. So without any more stalling, I'm going to run the chat I had with Rachel and catch up with you after our chat to find out a little bit more about how my running week went and that of the wider community. There's a minimal scripted intro today, but that's not because my guest doesn't deserve a warm and hyped up introduction. It's more selfishness on my part for wanting to get right into chatting with her. Anyone who listened to the last episode will already be well aware of who's joining me today, as we have a first for the podcast, seeing a continuation of a guest from the previous episode, effectively being a two-part special. In the last episode, we learned a little about how training and preparation had planned out ahead of last weekend's big event, but now it's time to find out how it all went. I've purposefully not viewed, liked, commented, or watched any of her content since the event's finale on Sunday because I wanted to be captivated by it all directly from the lady herself over the duration of our chat. That does, however, mean I'll be bombarding her feed once we're done. It is, of course, the returning conqueror of the Amsterdam Marathon 2023, Rachel Speirs, better known as RachRanAmsterdam. Welcome back.
Thanks, Stephen. Happy to be back.
I am honestly glad to have you back. It's nice to have a returning guest for once, but I've got a really important question for you before we even get going.
Go for it.
How did the episode go down with your mum? Because I did see before you made your own journey over that she was planning to listen to it on the flight over to the Netherlands.
She listened to it on her flight to Amsterdam and she honestly loved it. I feel like I thought she'd be sick of my voice, but she obviously likes hearing it. But I think it's just good because she can hear me speaking to someone else about running that she doesn't need to be part of the conversation about. And it's just quite nice. And again, when I mentioned that I'd met you at the expo, which we'll probably talk about, she was so excited. It was almost like I'd met a celebrity. She was like, that's so nice. And she's definitely excited about the second part. She's ready. She's followed it on Spotify, so she's ready for it to come out.
I'll have to get her on next. As a previous runner herself, I'll have to get her on as a future guest.
Yeah, I think it's like inspired because she's not ran in a while due to injuries, but
yeah,
she mentioned the other day, she was like, "Oh, maybe I'll start Couch to 5K," so she might be returning to the running world. Who knows?
Spot on. Yeah, it'd be good. It'd be good, and then you could run together.
Exactly. I think that'd be nice.
Right. Well, I think we very, very briefly had a little chat beforehand, not nearly as long as episode 1. So I just touched on there, but can you tell us how you're feeling having come back from the marathon? I think physically, and then we'll work our way through in a almost logical approach then after that.
Yeah, so I think you mentioned in the last episode, just like a wee snippet at the end, that I'd injured myself kind of 2 weeks out. I pulled my right calf muscle, so my calf is very sore now. I've actually got the physio tomorrow just to try and sort it out. So physically, that's the only thing. I think if my calf wasn't sore, I'd be back to peak fitness. So everything apart from the calf, but that was expected.
Okay, that's maybe not too bad, but you of course touched on there the expo. Can you talk us through how the travel went? Because you obviously had a very, very early flight over to Amsterdam. Your whole time in the Netherlands was compressed. So
Mhm.
can you talk through how the travel went? Did you
Yeah,
go to your hotel first, and then obviously talk about the expo and how I actually bumped into you, and did that actually help the calf as well?
yeah, yeah. So our flight was at 6 a.m. from Glasgow. So we got up about 3 and then headed there. Got there about 4. I was very excited. My boyfriend was very tired, but I was not tired. I was excited. I hadn't posted anything on Instagram because I didn't want to jinx. I only posted like once I actually got to Amsterdam. So the flight went very smooth. We got seats with extra legroom because I was like, I'm going to be running a marathon. Treat yourself. Um, so got the extra legroom, and then we couldn't check into our hotel till 3, and we landed about 8 a.m. or like
Wow.
maybe half 8. But my mum and brother were staying at the same hotel, so we actually our hotel was kind of further out, so we actually just went straight to the expo. My mum and brother were going to be meeting us there, but they were slightly late, so me and my boyfriend went round the expo. I think that's when I bumped into you. So bumped into Steve at the when I was getting a massage on my legs, which was very interesting. It was kind of explained it to my boyfriend like when you're getting your like blood pressure taken on your arm and the machine squeezes your arm, it
Yeah.
felt like that all over your legs, and there was like different programs. Like they started like with each section going up your legs, and then they started like all at once. It was definitely quite sore around my calf. I was hoping that it helped. I don't know, might have relieved a bit. Um, but yeah, that was my first expo, and it's just very exciting, like getting everyone together in one place, and you can feel the buzz. Everyone's excited. That wall with all the names was cool. Finally found my name, but
It was amazing, wasn't it? Because I mean, when I first went in, it was so nice walking into that expo
yeah,
and then going into that first hall. And I planned to go in early because I didn't want to get caught up in a rush. And then we walked into the first hall, and my wife's like, "You said it was going to be busy." Oh, sorry, I just wanted to get in early. But yeah, you weren't just getting a massage though; you were getting they're like I don't even know how to describe them. I think people will know what they are. The giant kind of zip on, um, almost like really long stockings, aren't they?
yeah, yeah. Big like if anyone, I'll have it on my highlight on my Amsterdam marathon, the video of me having it. But yeah, it's big zip on, yeah, almost stockings that, yeah, very. And he kept upping the pressure, and I was like, please stop. But
Yeah. I wasn't sure whether you were comfortable because you looked well happy as well. I don't know if you were comfortable or not.
because my boyfriend was sitting kind of further back, he had sat on like he'd found a seat to sit on, and he was texting me going like, "Are you okay? You look a bit in pain." And I was like, "I'm not sure, I'm not sure how I'm feeling right now."
I did think I was after I walked away. I was like, maybe I should have got a selfie just to say
I know,
here's this week's guest. But at the same time, I didn't want you feeling like you were just lying there, being like, oh, I wish you would. I wish you'd just bugger off.
I know we should have, we should have.
But it didn't hinder you, but it also maybe didn't help you as much as you were hoping it might.
Yeah, I think I was looking for any solution the day before.
I know. How far out then was your hotel? Like you said, it's quite far out.
Well, it was maybe like half an hour from the airport, but also like half an hour from like tram to the center. So
Okay.
yeah, we just kind of each day we'd just get like the tram to the center and then kind of just stay there. It wasn't too bad. Um,
Was it more in the south as well then, towards the Olympic Stadium?
it was kind of over to the east, I'd
Okay.
say. Yeah, it was like quite near the like the end of Vondo Park. It was quite near there.
Right. Okay. Okay. We had because we'd walked out before to the expo. I thought I'll
Mhm.
try it. I'll trial it in the morning, see how it goes. Because I wanted to be like, how am I going to get to the expo? That was my biggest concern. I wanted to be make sure I was on time, and I got my baggage dropped off. And it was half an hour walk, so we had to go because we were staying next to. It was a convention center right next to us as well, so we had to walk through this park.
Oh,
But it was half an hour walk as well, so I had that fear of I'm going to miss this, aren't I? I'm going to take a
yeah,
wrong turn or something.
yeah.
But at least you had the benefit of the tram or at least the metro to the stadium in the morning.
Yes. So but it was quite lucky we were a bit out because it wasn't as busy. Like when we got on, the like yeah, the metro was empty, which was good. Obviously filled up as we got closer. But once we got to the station at the Olympic Stadium, it was busy. Like we queued from like as soon as we stepped off the metro to like down the stairs to the ticket bits, it was like queues. And I remember when we were on the metro, I was like, oh, maybe we didn't need to leave as early, but I'm so glad we left like with lots of time because that was, it was busy and everyone was quite stressed because it was getting closer to the start time and obviously everyone there was running the marathon. So
Yeah. No, I ran down myself. I got caught in that hailstones and I ran down. But before I get too ahead of ourselves, so you had the expo. What else happened then on the day leading up to the marathon? Did you do a little bit of sightseeing? Did you try and keep your steps down? What was on the agenda?
Hope to keep my steps down, but I looked at my watch at the end of the day and it had about 18,000, which was the most I'd done in the 2 weeks I was injured. So, but yeah, headed back to the hotel after the expo, dropped her stuff off, and then we went for some breakfast, got some pastries. I'd taken like hydration tablets with me, so I was making sure that I was constantly hydrated. And then we actually headed into the centre and went on like one of the canal cruises,
Nice.
which was really nice. I ended up falling asleep on the canal cruise. I was just so tired. But yeah, it was nice. The weather stayed dry for the majority of that, and then headed back to the hotel for a nap because I think the 3 o'clock alarm clock was catching up on me. So lots of sleep. And then we headed out for dinner, went for some pizza in the centre again, carb loading, which was good. And then we were going to hang around the centre for a bit, but I was just like, I'd just rather get home, get organised, get everything laid out before the big day.
It's like Christmas Day, isn't it? Getting ready.
Yeah, it was a mix of nerves and excited. I think I was lying in bed on the Saturday night and I was like, I don't, like, in that mind, well, I missed a bit out. So we ran for one of the trams, which was like maybe like 100 metres because the tram was there and we needed to go. This was on the Saturday going for dinner. And I ran 100 metres and my calf was so sore.
Oh no.
I think that put like the fear in my head. I was like, I've just ran 100 meters and that's really sore. How on earth am I going to run 42 kilometers tomorrow? So I think from the dinner up until bed, I was like, I just want to finish it. And my boyfriend was like, this time tomorrow you'll have a medal. And I was like, I actually don't know if I will. My mind was just going places that probably shouldn't go the night before a marathon.
Dangerous places, definitely dangerous places. The head is such an enemy to us at times, but our best friend as well. I did see your story that you kind of signed off for the night, and it was like 9:30, 10 o'clock or something. It wasn't even, didn't feel that late, and of course I was still awake until about 1 a.m. and thinking, I've gone too far here. Rach has gone to bed at a really good time. She's going to be energized. She's going to be ready to go in the morning. And I was trying to make the most of my birthday as much as possible.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I forgot it was your birthday. Happy birthday.
Thank you. I was lucky enough to have a friend come up who lives in the south of the Netherlands, a town called Almelo. So he came up, did the expo. He came up and met us and spent the day. So similar to yourself, ended up walking like 23,000 steps. We'd gone to Central and then walked out, got pizza for lunch, and went to the Rijksmuseum, which we ran through the next day. Didn't know we were going to be doing that, so we walked out. We were going to go in because it was even quite pricey for what it was, and walk back to the station after doing a couple of bits and pieces. Not realizing that our hotel was closer to the Rijksmuseum than it was to the Rijksmuseum was to the center of Amsterdam. Lessons were learned.
Yeah, I feel like the day before a marathon, you hope to do no steps, but I feel like, especially if it's one abroad, you want to explore, and it just never happens.
I told Patrick Watkins, a previous guest, off in the past before he did Copenhagen, because he'd done 10,000 steps. I told him off, so he was making sure I wasn't doing that many.
Oh, that's funny.
So you got a good rest. You were fully rested. The early morning on the flight over hadn't affected you too much, but it probably allowed you to get a better sleep in a strange bed than you might otherwise have gotten.
Yeah.
So how did the morning pan out?
Morning, I woke up extremely nervous. I was not in a good mood at all. Usually the morning before a marathon, I'm so excited, but I was just like, my boyfriend was like, "Be excited," and I was like, "I don't think I'm going to be able to do this." And he was like trying to play like a playlist to hype me up. He was like, "Come on, come on," and I was like, "No, Jacob, like, honestly, I don't know what's going to happen here." So yeah, again, it was the mind games of, I think, because I'd put a lot of pressure on myself of time, and you've done, like, I'd done all my training runs and all that. I think that was, it was, I think that was the first worry, and then the second worry was like, well, what if we don't actually finish it? So managed to hype myself up a bit. I put my running playlist on, just like forgot about it. Was like, my boyfriend was like, if you don't finish, you don't finish. Like, no, it doesn't matter. Like, I think with that, he then switched to that mindset of, right, well, if you don't finish, it doesn't matter. Like, you're injured, don't worry. Like, we're still
Yeah.
gonna have a nice time in Amsterdam. You can come back if you really want to do the marathon next year, things like that. So yeah, that was the morning in the hotel. I brought a bagel with me from home, because I always have a bagel before a marathon. That's my pre-marathon ritual. But my boyfriend was laughing because I always bring Biscoff spread, but I'd forgot that, and I also wanted to bring a knife with me, and I forgot that you can't do that on planes.
Yeah, it's kind of frowned upon that. Yeah.
So that the morning was, I had just a plain bagel, which sometimes I have had, so it didn't really bother me that much. And then lots of water, and I'd also brought like a cereal bar as well, and a banana, of course. So I was fueled. I felt ready, and as soon as we stepped out of the hotel, I was excited, even though the hailstones were falling from the sky, which was, yeah, a nice welcome. I felt like, I think we spoke about it on messages. It felt like home.
Yeah, very Scottish welcome to the start of the day, wasn't it? It's
Yeah,
almost didn't feel like the day before had been very warm. Come the morning of Sunday, it
yeah.
dramatically dropped in temperature.
Yeah, I'm glad I brought, like, I had my race outfit on, but I had like my joggies and my hoodie on top. So to people on the metro, I probably didn't look like a runner, but yeah, I was quite.
Um, did your mood then, as you say, it kind of improved slightly when you got out of the hotel? Did it improve much more when you got to the actual event? And like you said, you kind of said at the beginning there, you saw how busy it was coming off the metro and just the streams of people going towards the Olympic Stadium. Seemed to be two flows of traffic going in different ways, and that was really confusing for me.
Yeah,
Um,
I think
did,
as soon as I stepped off the metro, all my like negative thoughts, nervousness left. I was so excited, which I was happy with. I was like, right, here's pre-marathon Rach, she's back. Like, because before every marathon, I'm so excited, and I was like worried because I was like, where's she gone? But she was back. I think it was like the atmosphere, just everything. I think because we'd been held up in the metro a bit, it was a slight rush to the start, but I still had like time to stretch and things, and my calf felt like it eased off a bit. And then when we walked into the Olympic Stadium, my eyes just like, what, I don't know about you, it was very emotional, like kind of walking in and looking around. I'm not a very emotional person, but my eyes like welled up, and I was like, oh my god, like this is incredible. I think starting in the Olympic Stadium was one of the highlights for me.
it was something else, wasn't it? I did have a wow moment because you were in Greenwave,
Yeah,
was it? Yeah, Greenwave as well. So we
yeah,
had to come through that. It almost felt like you were a footballer going through a tunnel, and you had to come through that underside section, and then to
yeah,
come out, it was like a wow moment of this is just something else. And yeah, it probably wasn't. It was nowhere near as busy as it was in spectator wise as it was later in the day, but
yeah,
it was something else. I don't know whether it was your family and your boyfriend in the crowd, but I did see a few tires flying and even the line rampant as well. I was like, that's really nice to see that in the crowd. And they were
yeah.
listing off all the nations that were there. I got the video of the starters, kind of the elite runners, and they were
Oh,
introducing them all as well. It's just as I'd come through. And you're right. I didn't get emotional at that point on that entry to the stadium
mhm.
so much, but it was something else. It just felt like a whole different experience compared to any other marathon.
Yeah, it was, and I think I might have just come in a bit after you because the screens were showing like the elites like just kind of running out of the stadium, and it was,
Ah,
yeah, and I could see my mum and brother and my boyfriend had come into like they'd come in like they were sitting in the seats, so like they were all waving, and I could see them, which kind of made me reassured. So
I was keeping an eye open for you because I wasn't quite sure if you were already there, if you were coming in behind me, and I got myself quite close to the start of our wave, and then I don't know about yourself, but I had done. I don't know if you know the story about what happened with Edinburgh with me, and I took the maximum dose of Imodium that day. But I didn't have to this time. I had two. I
nice.
thought, well, I'm going to go to the Portaloos. So our wave started, and I just thought, no, the Portaloos for the orange wave are clear now. I'm just going to jump in there.
Something, yeah.
And then I had to catch up with the full green wave. So I don't. I must have been near you at one point in time or past you. I just don't know. The starting was quite cool though, wasn't it?
Yeah, I don't know about you, but we started running before the start. Like they kind of opened a wave, and then everyone was. I've actually got a vid. I haven't posted it. My boyfriend took a video, and they kind of opened the gates to our wave, and we start running, and you can see me going, "Why are we running? The start's like not until like round the corner." But then everyone stopped at the start, and then we actually started. But yeah, that was the start was something else. I think because usually I'm like used to like maybe starting on like a main road or like Edinburgh and Manchester kind of starting on like a motorway or something like that. We're starting inside the Olympic Park. I felt like an athlete, like a true athlete.
It was really because I came out of Portland. It just started. But you're right. Everyone was running around. It's almost like Rachel the day before running for the tram.
Yeah.
So many people must have like burnt their legs like straight away.
Yeah.
I just walk through. Just take your time. You're not crossed that start line yet.
Yeah, I should have done that. I think I was just followed the crowd and was like, oh, we should be running.
It's so easily led, but I mean, it did feel really great to start in that environment and possibly set a lot of people off it with a good mental outlook towards the whole race. It certainly did for me. And coming round that corner, you're seeing all the branding, all the hoarding, the flags, and then you come through that lovely kind of arched gate, which we would then return through later on. Then talk to me about the race itself. Then, how did that all pan out for you? Were there any particular parts you weren't super happy with? Were there certain parts of the route that you loved? Can you talk me through the whole thing?
Yeah, so if people have seen in my story, it was a full roller coaster of emotions this marathon. So started off, felt really strong. My calf had it almost felt like it vanished. I feel like because my mind was like on the crowds and the atmosphere, my calf didn't feel sore, and I was aiming for a 4:30 time. That was kind of one of my main goals, and I stuck with them until about 21 kilometers. I felt so strong. I was going a good, like, consistent pace, and I could see the tracker on the app, and I was actually getting faster every 5k. And I was like, "Yep, this is what I've trained for." And I think running through like the Vondo Park, I'd like walked through there like last year when I'd went, and it was cool to see it kind of full of people. Although there was a slight because you come back that way, you were running, you maybe ran 2 kilometers, and it was like 40 kilometers, and you were like, oh no, this is going to be a long race. And I think I'd only ever tracked my marathons in miles, whereas this was the first one. For some reason I tracked it. I think I'd done my whole training block in kilometers, and obviously it was a European race, so it was kilometers, and I don't think I'll be doing that again. I think they just, even though they go by faster, they just dragged in, because I feel like the miles you only really have to go into like the 10s and the 20s, whereas the kilometers are the 10s, the 20s, the 30s, the 40s.
Yeah.
So it was, I remember looking at my watch and was like, oh, this is going to be long. But yeah, up until the 21 kilometer, I felt so good, felt so strong. I was with the 4:30 pacers. I even like went for a toilet break and caught back up with the 4:30 pacers, which I was really happy with. The canal part, I don't know about you, but there were some amazing houses along that canal. I remember just like that just took my mind off it for a while. I was like, I want to live here. This is cool. And I think I did a lot of my long runs along like the canal in Glasgow. So that's kind of prepared me, because I'd done like my 32-kilometer run along the canal, which was with like no one. I hardly ever saw anyone on that path. So it was good to kind of be with people running along the canal. But yeah, then 21 kilometres was when it all went a bit downhill. My calf completely cramped up, like the cramp where I looked down and I could like see it twitching.
Oh.
Yeah. So that almost as soon as I stepped over the halfway point, that happened. I had to stop like on the spot, and I was like, oh, like I don't think I can continue. And there were some girls around me like who I'd been running with a lot of the time, and we hadn't really spoke to each other, but like we were all running with each other for the first like 2 hours. And they were like, "Oh, you okay?" And I was like, "No, like please go ahead, like don't stop." And then so I took a wee minute and then just kind of walked it off, and then started running. But from 21 to 42 kilometers, the calf completely cramped.
So it wasn't much fun after that point. And
It was. I had my sunglasses on, and then there was a girl next to me. She's like, "It's not sunny. Like, take your sunglasses off." And I took them off, and she could see like the tears running from my eyes. I think it was more. I don't think the tears were from pain. I think the tears were more from the pressure I'd put on myself. Like, I'd posted on my Instagram, like when I first started training, I want 4:30. Like, I told people I want 4:30.
mm-hmm.
I felt like I deserved that 4:30, and it just been taken away from me quite quickly. And then I was just like walking, running, walking, more walking than running. And then it was the 4:40s pacers passed me, and I was like, oh my, like this is not good. And then the 4:50 pacers passed me, and I just completely broke down.
Yeah.
I was so upset, and I remember texting mom and boyfriend. I'd like created a group chat, and I just texted the word like struggling, and mom was like, "Don't worry, like it's okay to walk. Like we're at 32. They told me they were at 32 kilometers, so I had that in my head that they were there, and I would need that boost." But yeah, I was looking back on the pictures that have been posted, and a lot of them are me walking, and you can just see the pain in my face. So yeah, it was very much walk, run, walk, run. I knew that I would finish it. I don't think I was worried about that. I think it was the time in my head that I'd put the pressure on, which I just had to take that pressure off completely.
And it would have been, I suppose, different if you hadn't had the calf issue leading up to it. If you'd been in a physical condition where, let's say, the 4:30 shouldn't have been an issue at all, and you did something to ruin it yourself.
Yeah.
Then I would have said, well, that's something you have to learn from. But you had an injury that was of no fault of your own. It appeared, so maybe it was just even something you pulled yourself in the sleep, or it could have been a number of different reasons your calf is gone. There was nothing you could have done about that. But at the time, it's very hard to know that yourself, or to tell yourself that, especially given how hard that section between the halfway point to where your mum was at 32 kilometers, because I'd already been told there was a section that was industrial, and it was very difficult. There wasn't that many people, or compared to other areas of the route, and it would be very mentally challenging. And although there were a lot of people, or I found there was a lot more people than I expected, but even for me, that was the most challenging part. But that was just mental games for myself. I didn't have to worry about any additional pressures because of what you were going through. So I can kind of fully understand where that it's a long old section to go, where you're not feeling the best. Especially having had to come along the canal where you were feeling a lot happier. It was beautiful down there. I was more taken aback, and I knew this anyway about the Dutch. The cows just milling around, and there's no fences. It's just like little canals separating the fields. And I think that's you obviously didn't mention that before our chat, and I'd said I had that worry myself. My legs were starting to pulse, like they were going to go into cramp. And I think for me, that was because that first half was almost completely flat.
Yeah.
There wasn't really any feeling of rise or fall until we got to 19 kilometers, and we had a nice uphill, which was a relief for me, being that I train mostly on elevation. And so it settled my legs to that halfway point. And I got to halfway, and I thought, well, I'm no PB in my half, but
Mhm.
I'm feeling comfortable. Um, and yeah, I must have passed you, or maybe you were in for your toilet break at the time, because I didn't really come up to the 4:30 pacers until around about the halfway. So it's a shame that I missed you now, actually, because I think having someone you know as well, or at
Yeah.
least know of, it might have been a good relief for you. But you cracked on though, and you made strides to get to the 32 kilometers.
Yeah.
How did you feel that whole drag then? Because there were more elevations and there were sections that kind of dropped away, and then the crowds obviously built up a lot more. How did that kind of help you or hinder you at all?
Yeah, I think I hadn't really like read up on the course a lot, but I think that my 21 to 32K was probably the worst part to like be going through a mental tough time.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know if my mum and boyfriend had planned like at the start. I think they were just planning to get me at the end. But I think as soon as I sent that text, they were like, "Okay, let's go and try and get her somewhere." And I think knowing that they were at 32 just kept me going. Although my watch was 0.8 kilometers like ahead of ahead
So
of like
was mine.
yeah,
That's really annoying though, Rachel, isn't it? Because we ran, I don't know about your final, but I ran an extra kilometer.
yeah, no, me too. I think I was 43.1 or something. So yeah, but I remember mom texted me like I'm at 32, and then obviously my watch hit 32, but technically they weren't until like 32.8. So that
Yeah.
0.8 kilometers was, and I remember they were just at a corner. Just as I turned the corner, they were all there, and I didn't want to stop. I was like, if I stop and kind of chat to them, I'll like I felt like I just kind of had to keep going.
Mhm.
So it gave me I didn't usually I take a hydration pack, but it'd been causing me issues the past few weeks, so I just took like one of the belts. Um, so they handed me a bottle of water, kind of ran slowly past them, and they were like 10 kilometers to go. But I think mom was maybe thinking that was going to help, and 10 kilometers seemed like a very far distance. And I was like, please don't say that. That's very long. Um, but yeah, from 32 to the end, I think, because it was like kind of a straight bit, and we'd kind of done a lot of that before. Again, I think I've scanned over when we ran through the Rice Museum. I went straight to the painful bit. I want to go back to the Rice Museum. That was incredible to run through.
It
The
was a delight. Did you give the high five to the lion that was at the
yeah,
Rice Museum?
yes. Oh, I think that was when I was feeling the best as well, and I was like, oh my god, this is going to be the race this is going to be the best race of my life. But yeah, that was a highlight, and it was nice to like run past that again and reminisce on me feeling happy the first time I ran through it.
Did it help spur that same sort of emotion then? Did it help lift you because you knew you were getting closer to the Olympic Stadium again?
Unfortunately, not,
Yeah.
because as I was running past it is when the fastest half marathon people started to pass me. Which just,
Oh,
yeah, that just plummet. I think as because I heard like a beeping noise from like a bike, and I was like a motorbike, and I was like, what's going on? And they were like, we all had to move into the right because the like I think the first half marathon guy was like coming, and I was like, oh my god, no, like I don't know what time they started that, but that just like was like, how are the half marathon people finishing already? Like, how is this possible? So I think that just threw like a spanner in my head, and I was like, Rachel, you're the slowest person here right now. Like, so it was, yeah, that was what threw me again. And then as soon as we entered the Rondo Park up until the end, that seemed like I feel like the last few kilometers always seemed like a long time. And when we were coming up to, we ran out of Rondo Park and I stopped. I was like, I just need to stop. And there was a woman behind me. Um, didn't actually catch her name, but I then found the photos that were in together. Her name was Val, and she tapped me and she was like, "Don't stop now. Like we've got 2 kilometers to go. Like just." And she ran with me for like the last 2 kilometers. We didn't really speak much, but she was like, "No," and she kind of held my hand and was like, I didn't tell her that I was in pain because I was just like, "No, like she just needs to carry me." And she then ran on a bit, but she kept turning around and was like, "Come on, come on, come on." And yeah, I put on my story when we were passing that I Amsterdam, like the big sign with all the flags. Up until there, I was like, I don't know if I'll finish this. But then I ran into as soon as I ran into Olympic Park, it was kind of the feelings of my calf and all the mental stuff all left. It was like you've just like ran another marathon. Like
Yeah.
be hard on yourself. And I think once I finished, got the medal, I saw my mom at the end and she was like, "Yeah, well done." And I took my sunglasses off and just burst into tears. I think again it was the pressure that I'd put on myself. It wasn't the pain I was crying from, it was the pressure, which
You'd put a lot of pressure on yourself, and your head had dug a hole
yeah.
at that last. Yeah.
Yeah, and like I'd put it on my story, like, oh, like no PPs here today, and everyone was like, "You just ran a marathon. Like, why are you saying no PPs? Like, you've literally ran a." And I'd seen Emily post like early in the week about, and I think Alison had posted as well, but like a PB isn't just time. Like
No.
a PB can be like you felt good, and on it, like the PB for me that day was I ran a marathon. Like that was doesn't matter what time. That was like possibly I think it was my slowest marathon, but with a like cramped calf for a half marathon, I'll take it.
Well, that's it. You'd run X number of marathons beforehand, and you
Yeah,
added onto that tally, so that beat your personal best of how many marathons you'd previously run. So
yeah,
it's still a PB. It may not have been a PB in completion of time that you were hoping for,
yeah,
but hopefully it wasn't an overall negative
yeah.
event for you. Hopefully you kind of come away from it going, well, I've learned a lot from this. Are there things that you maybe learned that you're taking away as positives from the whole run?
Yeah, I think it set like a fire in my belly to like I don't know go out there and because I know that 4:30 is there. Like I can feel it. I know it's there. Um, Again, I think on the build up, it's just that lack of like the strength training was there, but maybe not proper. That the calf wasn't as strong enough. But I think positive takeaways from the day, the atmosphere. Like I think if I hadn't put the pressure on myself, the day would have been perfect. The atmosphere, the route, majority of it without the industrial parts were incredible. I think marathons are great ways to see places that you maybe wouldn't have seen. Like I probably wouldn't have taken myself out to like that big canal, but if I was just visiting Amsterdam on like a city break.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think it's those friends that you make during marathons that maybe you don't speak to a lot, but you're all in it together. Um, and
The
that's
likes of Val and the
yeah.
girls you were running with. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think it's made me want to. I've always said I won't do the same marathon twice, but I feel like I quite like flat elevation, and I think maybe because I hadn't properly looked at the route, looked at the route, that maybe threw me off because there was parts I was like, I don't even know like where we're going now. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know how long we've got to like. Obviously, I knew how long, but I don't because when I'd done Manchester and Edinburgh, I know both of those places quite well. So I knew I was like, oh well, I know that that's that far to the finish line. Whereas when we were kind of at like 34 kilometers, I was like, right, well, I know we've got like 8 kilometers to go, but I have no idea where we're running, what the crowds will be like. So I would like to go back and do it again with all that knowledge behind me.
You starting to go back. Let's say you do it next year. You would
Yeah.
go back with knowledge, but I am pretty sure. Now I need to check to kind of check and make sure. But I'm pretty sure next year might be a big anniversary for them.
Oh, I have no idea.
I heard when they were doing the introductions and like, I'm pretty sure that next year may be something daft like their 50th anniversary or something along that lines. So it might be worth having a wee check and seeing, because that
Yeah.
would be really cool to go back, get revenge, not on the course, but
Yeah.
on the mental state that your mind let yourself get into. And
Yeah.
you've got the winter to go into the gym, do some strength and conditioning, hopefully give time for the calf to recover, but also build up the strength. And you could always run another marathon because you're wanting to run as many marathons or 10 marathons before you're
Yeah.
30. You
Yeah.
want to run two marathons a year. So you get another marathon beforehand and go back to
Yeah.
Amsterdam.
Well, I've got London in April,
There
so
you go. Perfect.
I've got big plans for that. But I think the pressure, as I've said multiple times, when I started my 16-week training, I said in my post, I want 4:30.
Mm-hmm.
Most people will probably not remember that, but I like that's And I don't think I'll do that again. I don't think I'll tell people what I want, what I like time I want, because I think that was, I'm like, oh, people know that. And I went back into work on yesterday and it was like, oh, did you get your 4:30? And I was like, oh, yeah, let's not do this again. Let's not tell people what time I want. And even on the metro there, I was like to Mum, yeah, my A goal's maybe 4:20. Let's go 4:20, B goal 4:30, C goal 4:40. Like, yeah, we're not. Let's not do that again.
Yeah, it's difficult because if you verbalize it, it almost puts the additional pressure on you.
Yeah.
To have to do it in that time. I was in the opposite sort of camp to you. My time that I wanted was it would have been a 10-minute PB, a 10-15-minute PB on what I originally had. And that was, for me, a conservative. I know I can do that.
Yeah.
But there was everyone around me was saying, well, no, you're going to do it X faster. And in reality, they were correct. But I didn't want to build myself up for failure.
Yeah.
I as much as I would at the time prior to the run, I wanted to get sub 4. I didn't want to build myself up because I remember how, because my first marathon was the one that I wanted to get a sub 4:30 for the first attempt. I remember how bad I felt thinking that I hadn't reached it, although in reality I had on the first one. I remember how bad I felt and how negative I was being on my own performance, and it wasn't healthy. So then going into Loch Ness, I went with no time goal, and I didn't I obviously had a time in my head, but I didn't verbalize it, and I surpassed what I was aiming for. And fortunately, returned to Edinburgh wasn't a PB run. It was more to get over the disappointment from the time before and help someone else. So I think you're right. It's better to have an idea yourself. And certainly everyone knows that you want a sub 4:30. That is going to be your goal. Yeah. But no matter how your training goes, how the next marathon goes, how your strength and conditioning goes, you can have a time in your head. But if you keep that to you and that's your A goal, then you put less pressure. You're exerting less pressure in the sphere around you to then feel like everyone's going to think I've not done as well because I haven't hit the time that I said I was going to, because you've unintentionally put that pressure on yourself. Calf aside, that's possibly been where that mental difficulties come from. But you always take away from a marathon like that, and you still did phenomenally well, Rach. It was a very tough day weather-wise.
Yeah, we had like 4 seasons in a day.
We did have 4 seasons in one day. And I don't know what your perspective was on some of the areas of let's say just after the Rice Museum or just beforehand. Some of the barriers were quite narrow. Yeah. The heavy rain had created puddles. What was your perspective on that side of the race then? Were you quite happy kind of navigating those, or was it not so much of an issue?
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. It was definitely an issue in some parts, I think, as well, because they had a lot of like crossing bits as well. There's a bit where like we actually had to stop still because there was people crossing, which was not ideal. But yeah, I think it got, because I'd started off quite fast, I ended up in quite like a fast group and people were quite competitive. So when we got quite crammed in, there was someone behind me like pushing me, like a guy was like pushing me like with his hands, and I turned around and I was like, what are you doing? And he was like, go faster. And I was like, there was like a guy in front of me, so I was like, I physically can't go faster. Yeah. And he was getting really annoyed. But I think that was like the first, I think it was just after the Rice Museum. So again, it was just like the start of the race. Everyone was like feeling
itching to get going. Yeah. No, I didn't put hands on anyone because I did get annoyed with that myself. People kind of squeezing through, pushing through. They weren't other people weren't checking shoulders. But it was narrow in sections. There were puddles. We as Scots people are used to running through puddles, but a lot of people were trying to avoid them and they were stopping dead. Same as at the hydration stations. They weren't pulling to the right or pulling to the left. They were just forming a wall. And that's probably the part I found the hardest about the race was it was too many people for me. I loved it, but it was too many people.
Yeah, I think with Edinburgh and Manchester, definitely not as many people, and you don't think it's going to affect you that much, but
Yeah.
especially at the hydration stations, when even though they have everyone kind of lined up handing out water, people are always going to go to that first few people.
Yeah.
And it was that
The,
standstill at some point.
the pushing, the shoving, the standstill.
Yeah.
I found that very difficult because I hadn't experienced that before in any of the two marathons that I'd run. What I did have in my head though is, come the day that I eventually get to do London, I know that the roads are a lot wider. I know that there's a lot of people, but from what I believe from having had Steve on the podcast in the past and knowing a lot of people that have run it, it is fairly flat and it is fairly wide. So you can take a lot of what you've learned from Amsterdam.
That's true.
And some of the negatives, some of the positives. And I think with having London as your next one, I fully believe that'll be the race for you.
Yeah,
that'll be where you'll get your PB, and I think because it'll be closer to home as well, it'll feel even better.
Yeah, and I think London's always been the one, like, whenever I started running, it was like, oh wow, London Marathon, I've always watched on the TV. So to like be doing that next and to potentially get a PB, I think that'll be, and again, yeah, closer to home, because not many people know, but I'm actually moving to London at the end of the year. So leaving Glasgow, moving to the Big Smoke. So it will be really close to home. It will be home. So I think that'll kind of calm the nerves, because I said to my boyfriend, we got home on Monday night and he was like, oh, would you have changed anything? And I was like, maybe go like a few days earlier, or like maybe an extra day earlier, because I think it was that arriving on the Saturday, like going to the expo, you want to get everything done, you want to see everything, you want to like make sure you've eaten enough. It's a lot for just cramming into one day. So I think with the next one being in London, I'll have that more relaxed feel. It will be home. You don't need to worry about, like, I don't know, oh, what am I going to eat for breakfast? Because like I don't have my usual things here. Like that'll all kind of fall into place.
With that bombshell, that is probably more of the universe saying it's going to happen there, because it will be your home. It will be your home marathon at that time. You will be able to hop on the London Metro, whatever it's called, and I believe that you, as a holder of a race number, you get to travel for free for a lot of the lines. So you'll be able to chill, just take your time. You'll be able to run a lot of it as well.
Yeah, and go to like the expo when it's quiet. Like I feel like if you're visiting, it's like you only really get the busy option, whereas I'll be able to go whenever I'm free and it's quiet.
So maybe that's a takeaway from Amsterdam then, Rach, is it wasn't meant to be, because it's meant to be for London.
Yeah, London.
And that was just the universe's way of giving you the extra lift of knowing that it'll be your home one.
Yeah, and I think it's like, if Amsterdam like had went perfectly, there's a lot of lessons I've learned like in this race, and I feel if maybe in a few years, if this happens again, I'll know exactly how to deal with it. Like I'll know if my head starts like getting negative thoughts, I'll know how to fix that and things like that. Whereas if it hadn't happened and I got it in a few years, then, and maybe in a few years I'll be going for a faster time, and you don't want it to happen then.
No, exactly. You learn something every time.
Yeah.
You're going to get it at London. It's going to be at your first major. You're going to be your home marathon.
Yeah.
That's the positives of it all. Unfortunately, next year's marathon for Amsterdam isn't the anniversary. It's the 48th marathon. So
maybe I'll go back for the 50th.
There you go. It's a few years' time. But at the same time, if you get your target when you get your target at London, not putting pressure on you, I'm telling you, it's the universe's way. At least then it takes the pressure off you. If you wanted to go back to Amsterdam next October, go for it. Make a little holiday of it. Spend a little bit more time, and then you can just enjoy the race a little bit more without the self-imposed pressure. And you'll know the route, you'll know the crowds, where they're going to be good and bad, where you're going to feel a little bit low. So you weren't alone, and the head is your own worst enemy. I felt that from probably around about 30 kilometers. I found it very, very difficult. And even coming through that finish line, as spectacular as it was, as soon as I stopped my watch, I just felt this overwhelming pressure.
Mm-hmm.
It's just knowing that you completed it, but at the same time, it takes so much out of you. And you've got that physical exertion as well as the mental exertion. You're just putting yourself through torture. So yeah, it might not have been what you hoped it to be, but you still got a personal best out of it. You've got another marathon ticked off. You've got another piece of silverware.
Yeah.
You should be very, very proud. I hope you're very proud.
Yeah. I think it's taken a few days. People kept going, "Oh, I'd like to enjoy it," and my reply was like, "No, taste every minute." But now, finally, I'm like, I did. I think it's those negative thoughts that were probably still hanging around the past few days. Like, yeah, I'm proud of myself for doing another marathon, and especially abroad, because that adds the extra. There's so much extra that you don't even think about. So yeah, our first international marathon.
Yeah, good. There's you're getting the positives.
Yes.
Spot on. I would at this point I would ask what's next, but we also know London. Move to London first, and then London Marathon. If not Amsterdam next October, are there any other marathons in and around sort of time you'd be interested in doing?
I've entered the ballots for Berlin and Chicago, so we'll leave that with the universe.
Yes.
But if I don't get into either of them, then I think it might be Loch Ness. I'll come back to Scotland, and I think I'll be Loch Ness.
That would be even better, Rach, because then I could come and help support as well.
Yes, that would be great. Yeah, I think, especially if I'm moving like away from Scotland, I want to come back and do Loch Ness. I've heard great things. I had a few like friends that had done it this year, and they loved it. So it'll be very different because I've kind of only, well, apart from Edinburgh, it's not really a city marathon. I've kind of only Manchester and Amsterdam are definitely kind of city ones, whereas Loch Ness I can imagine is different.
Yes, very different. Be very difficult to train hills in London.
That's true.
You might have to go in a couple of tower blocks and run up and down their stairs.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, we'll come to that when.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, keep your fingers crossed for Chicago and Berlin. What happens if you get both, though?
Oh yeah, I know. I did think this today because I have. Yeah.
Do you go for that expense of a double major, a triple major for 2024?
Yeah.
Or do you defer maybe?
I'll leave it with the universe, and we'll also see what the bank balance is saying.
Yeah, well, I mean, you could always accept it and defer it, and then you have a major. You have two majors in 1 year and one following year. Then it would be unfortunate you wouldn't be having Loch Ness, but that will always be there, and you can always come up in a future year.
Yeah, I think Loch Ness will definitely be one that I will do. Just when that is.
And the medal is always phenomenal. It's such a lovely medal that you get from Loch Ness. So I mean, that's worth doing it just for that. Yeah. Spot on. I've loved that, Rach. It's been really nice to have you back on. It's been a bit of a roller coaster kind of going through that with you. I mean, he started off top of the world.
Yeah.
You went to the depths and you've come back up again. So it's a good, and you'd said this in the first episode, at least you can listen back as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
And reflect on it.
Yeah. Because I think in the first one, I was very, it'll be a PB, and yeah, this is probably slightly different, but a bit more realistic. I think it's probably for people that not everyone's going to get their time PB at every race, so just ride with it.
Exactly, and there will always be races that you'll be disappointed, and it's hard to tell people that you've got to roll with the punches, and you will have disappointments, but at the time, nobody can tell you otherwise. But it'll be good for you to listen back and. Yeah. No, honestly, you did do phenomenally well. It was as easy as a flat marathon would sound. It was very, very tough. So no, big kudos to you. For anyone that wants to follow your journey going forward, though, or actually, this next part maybe doesn't make much sense, but for anyone that wants to follow you, where can they do so, and on what social platforms? I was also going to say if they wanted to get involved with the Ladies Run Club as well, but certainly if you'll be moving away, that'll be changing for you. You'll be looking for a new club.
Yeah, so for the girls' run club, we have like 3 other leaders, so it will still be going on in Glasgow.
Good.
But yeah, I've been documenting a lot of my progress on TikTok, which I kind of go back and forth with. It's Instagram is where it all is for me. I feel like you can connect more with people there. But yeah, I've started to think about. I think I definitely will join a run club in London. Whether I'll maybe help lead one, I'm not sure. I might just go back to trying to find the love for running again. It's kind of slightly dampened right now.
Find your zone, find your zen.
Yeah, I think take a bit of time for myself, not put any. It's nice not having a plan and not having an app notify you every day, being like, you have to go a run today. It's been quite nice, but also feel slightly lost of what am I going to do until I need to start training for London. And yeah.
I certainly have a couple of people. If you're looking for anyone to run with in London that are good people, especially females, I can put you in contact with them. Yeah. On TikTok and Instagram, though, are they both Rach ran a marathon?
Yeah, both Rach ran a marathon.
Okay. Well, I think that's us then. Thank you once again for joining me, and hopefully your mother enjoys this episode as much as the first one.
Yeah, shout out to my mum. She'll definitely be listening. She'll probably be the first listener when it comes out.
Shout out to the whole support crew that went over, your boyfriend, your brother, your mother. Yeah. No, good on them as well. But no, thank you very much for joining me, Rach, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thanks so much, Steve, and huge congrats on your PB as well.
Amazing. Thank you very much. What a roller coaster of emotions we had right there. In one respect, I am devastated for Rachel, from feeling in tip-top condition and cruising towards her goal, much like how I started off Edinburgh last year, to feeling like the world was falling away from her. But in another respect, I am excited for her and have full belief that she'll go into her first major to smash her target and do it all within arm's reach of home. As great as Amsterdam was, it will be even more memorable when she blows it out of the water in London. I was so glad to be able to meet Rachel in person as well, even if it was only briefly. Sadly, no selfie for the gram, but when she makes it to the Baxter's Loch Ness Marathon, no matter when that might be, I'll be there to support her and make up for that missed opportunity. And who knows, I may even decide to run it again myself. So once again, thank you so much to Rachel for coming on and being such an amazing guest. In addition to what you've heard in both recordings on both episodes, there was also a great pre and post chat session, making the whole process really enjoyable. All the best to Rachel with her recovery and the very best of luck with the move to London. Hopefully, we can touch base with her again in the future and find out how her first major has gone and a little bit more about her goal to achieve 10 marathons before she turns 30. Onto my own experience with Amsterdam now, I suppose. And as Rachel mentioned at the end of the chat, I did get a PB. There's actually going to be a blog about the pre and post marathon experience, which will likely have a lot more detail in it than I'm about to cover. You should be able to find that on the website soon at the point99podcast.com/blog. Before I get into talking about the PB itself, I will reiterate what I said with Rachel. The marathon, as great as it was super well organised and such an amazing event overall. It just wasn't the race for me in all respects. It was a little bit too busy, too many people. There was a lot of tunnel visioned runners, maybe in the wrong category, putting themselves into a wave advanced of where they should have been, so they were blocking people. There was a limited amount of overtaking opportunities because people were running in a straight line or causing a blockade of a wall. There were people pushing past without consideration or even asking. There was no courtesy. Yeah, whatever it was, it just felt a little bit off. There was also the bottlenecking for people avoiding puddles, and then those that were stopping dead at hydration stations, sponge stations, banana stations, you name it. There was just a number of obstacles. I don't want to paint a picture of the overall marathon being a negative. As I say, the organisation and the support from everyone spectating or volunteering or working at the event was phenomenal. Just some of the other runners made it a very, very difficult event to take part in. All of that aside, I did produce a performance well in advance of anything I thought I could ever pull out of the bag. The faith, support and motivational chat I had from all the legends on my DMs and in person over the past few weeks was fundamental to my success, including wearing the absolute belter of the Nike Vaporflies. Ian, you are an absolute star for giving me the heads up on those. My previous personal best was a 4-hour 24 marathon, which I set at the Baxter's Lochs Ness last year while wearing the kilt, just taking it easy, enjoying the marathon. So I set myself the reasonable estimate time of 4 hours 11 when I signed up for Amsterdam. The time I achieved, however, sort of blew that out of the water. Like quite a number of other runners, I had my GPS watch ping the marathon distance about a kilometre from the finish line, like we just mentioned there with Rach. She was the same. So that's put me in a little bit of a conundrum. Do I take the chip time or do I take the Strava time? My chip time is a 3-hour 45-minute marathon. My Strava time is a 3-hour 41 marathon. Either way, it is far in advance of what my personal best was and what my goal was. Either way, no matter what I take, what I decide to take, probably going to be the Strava time. It is a reversal to how I felt prior to the marathon, as I am now slightly annoyed as I know I could have gone even faster had it not been for many of the other runners preventing it. I know I could train and go for it again, but that might not be conducive to it at the same time. It might have been my one shot to prove what I could really do. So I am both really happy and low-key grumbly at the minute. Future plans to run another marathon are non-existent at the moment. The love and feeling will inevitably come back to me, but for now I'm riding the wave of pride in accomplishing something I thought far outside my reach. A massive congratulations to everyone who smashed the marathon though. No matter the finishing time or if you reached your goal, it's still a personal best. You've achieved another marathon completion, beating your previous number of marathons completed. There we go. That's all you need to take away. A special shout out to those who I spotted on my gram feed that were also taking part, but especially to Sarah Jenkinson, otherwise known as Sarah Gen X, as she did actually spot me on course, but she didn't want to shout to me or say anything because she didn't want to distract me. She said I was very much in the zone. But we do have a number of people. I don't know if they're listeners, but I'm still going to shout them out because I think they're worthy of just that. And I had written down a few of them. So here we go. I've had Hassan, the challenger in me is his handle. He absolutely smashed it and he had this great flag. I'm not quite sure where he's from, but he just looked like he was a happy, smiley chap all the way around. We also have Jennifer Rose. That is jen.likes.running. Esther Downs. I think that's how you say her name. And her handle is Flying Feet Running. AJ_running_coach. Andrew Jacqueline. Colin Simpson. Supercall_runs. Grant Kerr, who is Grant_Kerr94, and to someone who's local to me who did a phenomenal time for his first marathon, but then he is actually just an insanely fast runner, is Blair Mackay, and he is North_runner_BM. They all took part. They all have fantastic photos up with their medals, but there's going to be so many more people that I've potentially missed on the feed, the way that Instagram works. So if you are a listener, if you were taking part, I do want to give you a shout out in the next episode. So let me know. I'm very, very happy to do an additional shout out. But everybody, so well done to you all. It's, as much as I'm grumbling about some of the other runners, I hope it's not yourselves. But yeah, I hope you had a great run. And that's all I'm going to say. From one marathon to another, however, and we're going to cover a little bit of the community and what was going on over the rest of the weekend for those who weren't at Amsterdam. It was the Yorkshire Marathon on the same day. I did actually see some Yorkshire Marathon t-shirts in the crowd and running at Amsterdam, which was slightly confusing, but that must have been from previous years. But for anyone running at Yorkshire, or even any of the other distances at Yorkshire, any of the other races that were taking part that weekend, and any of the other distances at Amsterdam, super well done. I've seen a number of mixed emotion posts over the last few days, none more so than from the wonderful family that is the What the Fartlek podcast. In fact, I actually had episode 1 of their latest season playing while I was running. I put it on over the second third of the marathon to listen to the wee man Matty himself getting interviewed by Rob, and that helped me so much to settle my nerves in that midsection. But also throughout my training block, they were a fundamentally important aspect to how I was training. They had their episodes out ready for my long runs, and it was so good to listen to their chat, their hilarity, and their just general amazing banter. Anyone that is familiar with the What the Fartlek podcast and the wider family will know that they're such an amazing bunch of people. They like to get everyone involved. They're very welcoming, and that was just shown throughout the posts at the Yorkshire Marathon. They were there en masse to give support to anyone running, whether a multi-time marathon finisher or a first-time marathon finisher. They were there to help people enjoy the overall experience, to help them smash it. And yeah, a lot of them have come away with amazingly glorious looking medals, is probably the best way to describe them. Name-wise for Yorkshire, I don't have a list because my weekend has been so busy, especially with the travel, and I don't want to announce some names and not others. So if you were taking part and you know that I'm speaking about you, mega well done. Yeah, it was a tough weekend for you as well there. I don't think the course is that flat compared to Amsterdam, so you're all troopers. Super well done. Coming event-wise, we have a few faces heading to the Run the Blades, the night one, tonight, so Friday night. Good luck to everyone who is taking part. I do have a list of some people that are planning to head to it, but I'm not going to read them out because I'm not sure if they're actually going. And I'm going to wait to see if they do head along, and then I'll give them a shout out next week. Let's start wrapping up the episode though, kicking things off with who you can expect to hear from in episode 4. Now, I briefly mentioned his name in the previous episode where I spoke about my little weekend away in Edinburgh and tipped my cap towards a future guest who was in attendance. That likely flew past most people, but for anyone who did take note, you'll remember that it will be, of course, the main man behind the EH3 milers, and yet another ultra runner to add to the list of previous ultra runner guests to the show, Chris Evans. And his handle, for anyone who wants to check him out beforehand, is chris.runs.a.lap. May be familiar to some of you because we have read his name out in the past. Chris has been a long-time supporter for the podcast, pretty much from day one, I think. So it would be great to finally get him on the show and put it all together. Even if we do have to re-record the episode before it comes out next week, it has been pre-recorded, but he's not happy with the way that it went and he wants to do it again. So I'm going to give him the podcast first opportunity to do that. Otherwise, it's the usual chat on where you can get in contact with the show and also find us on social media. If you do want to get in contact, you can drop us an email at thepoint99podcast@gmail.com. Drop me a DM at either of these handles to the show or to myself, and that is the Point99 Podcast on Instagram or Mr_Steve_runs. You can drop us a message also to our Facebook page. Just search for the Point99 Podcast. Additionally, there is a contact form on our website, and you can find all the links to every episode so far, find a link to the blog, the merchandise, and a few other things at thepoint99podcast.com. Finally, and in slight association with the podcast, we do also have a running community which is growing. It's on the Halo app. If you do want to get involved with that running community, just get the banner or take part in planned runs, mostly in the central belt of Scotland, but we are expanding into England and worldwide. You can drop over to the cult_runners on Instagram, drop us a message and join the chat with the link there. I'm going to be producing and posting some content on that page very, very soon, so you can find out a little bit more about some of the people and faces behind that community. But that is that. If you're interested in finding out a little bit more about how I got on with Amsterdam, as I've said earlier in the podcast, you can do just that in a few days' time when I drop the blog on the website. Otherwise, I hope you have a spectacular week. Stay safe, enjoy your runs, and you'll hear from me soon.